I want to introduce to you today our guest host, and that is Mike Weaver. Mike is the director for Region 4 for the National Tile Contractors Association. And Mike's got a few topic areas he'd like to chat about with us today. Feel free to jump on in and join the conversation, talk about anything you would like to talk about. And I think the topics that Mike is going to bring up are things that'll interest you and interest all of us, and are really good things we should know about. So as always, though, I want to mention that today's program is sponsored by Custom Building Products. Mike Weaver, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike with Trendsetter Tile and Stone, and we work in South Florida. We specialize in bathroom installations, backsplashes, and some of the more critical things regarding waterproofing and everything. And I just had been speaking with some installers over the last couple of months, and there was a couple of things that they brought up to me. And so I thought we could maybe start a conversation on how you guys handle some of the other things that these contractors brought up to me. And the first one was about shower pans and the drain systems that are used, whether you use a clamping style or if you use the integrated bonding flange and you're waterproofing. And an installer brought up to me that he had experienced some discolored marble on the shower pan. And there was also this article that I found. This was from July 2020 Tile Letter, and it was an article written by Pavlo Starkov, if I have his name correct. And he wrote a great article on about how the marble can be discolored and the reasons why. And a lot of times it has to do with an integrated bonding flange and the way the thin set meets up at that flange, and how the water does not really escape like it would through a weep hole system. And I was just curious if any of you guys experienced that type of thing. I know that the only time that I ever experienced something similar to this actually had to do with clogged weep holes. And there was actually a glass tile on the shower pan, and you could see through the glass how it was retaining water. The thin set was staying dark underneath that glass. And I know it's more common with marble because marble certainly is on top of a shower pan more often. But does anybody have any past experiences with that, or gone and seen a failure or heard anything like that? I just wanted to open that up to you guys and see what your experiences are.
Dave Gobus is raising his hand.
Yeah, I've seen it for about the last 35, 40 years. It's nothing new.
Right.
And
what was the way that you most found it to be prevalent?
surface applied waterproofing's definitely amplified it. I still take a lot of problem calls and emails, and that one turns up probably, I can't say every week, but every 2 weeks or so. I mean, I've amassed a whole gigabyte of pictures of stained marble and shower floors, and I literally mean a gigabyte. And it's really nothing new. I understand it's not competitive, but marble used to be a lot more expensive than it is now. But I quit putting marble floors and shower stalls back in the late 80s or early 90s. It just wasn't worth it. The risk is just too high for me. You know, but now everybody sells these patterns for $3 a foot and everybody wants them in their floor. But yeah, the surface applied waterproofing definitely makes a major contribution to the issue.
Right. And yeah, because I've thought about it before, and it concerned me because if I offer a customer a warranty type of shower from the manufacturers only want you to use their specific drain with their specific waterproofing. And if it is an integrated bond flange, that certainly does make it a higher risk that this could happen. And what do you feel is the best way if someone said, well, I've got to have marble on this shower pan. I want it, and it's some kind of light Carrera, some kind of translucent type of stone. What would be your suggestion for someone to go forward with that assembly?
Warranties don't cover discoloration of stone due to moisture. There's nothing you're going to do to stop it. There's no way you can warrant it. You can do whatever you want to do. You can put all the sealer in the world on it, which will actually probably increase the problem. There's nothing you can do about it. That's just the way it is. You know, and you'll get a sheet where you'll get, you know, like 10 tiles are particularly dark and all the rest of them are just fine, just a higher absorption rate. I mean, I've gotten in claims where I've had to cut that stuff apart on a saw and demonstrate the porosity of one stone versus the other. The normal thing you do is a moisture absorption test, but you know, people can't relate to a moisture absorption test. If I take it and I run it through a saw and prep the sample, which you have to polish a sample to see that type of microscopic view, then you see the voids in the stone as compared to others, and or the different composition of the stone. The mineral composition of the stone will affect the moisture as well, the retention of moisture. So I think if I was going to warrant it myself, I understand exactly where you're at, because I had a shop for 28 years before I got into this industry stuff. And I always told my marble customers, when they wanted one on the floor, I told them, I really think you're a tile customer and we'll do it, you know, and I don't have a problem with the warranties and all the rest, but discoloration due to moisture is not something you warrant. This can't be done.
Right. It's always a possibility with the stone, no matter how hard you try to avoid it.
The nature of the beast.
Yeah. I see. Okay, thank you. Did anybody else have any input on experience with that?
Speak up. Don't leave me here by myself.
Trask, you're muted. Trask is trying to unmute over there.
I'm trying to unmute. I'm not going to leave you, Dave. And I just jumped in, but I think I know the gist of where you're at. And we've had a lot of call for this, both in slab floors, like Carrera slab floors, on showers and bathrooms, and of course, like the mosaics and stuff. And it's always problematic. We all know it's problematic, and everybody kind of wants to believe, like, oh, well, just do your best, it'll be fine. Well, you know, that doesn't really work. I mean, everybody gets amnesia, as I know Dave's fond of saying, because that's reality. They'll get amnesia. And so, I mean, we're qualifying the crap out of people. It's the same with soapstone or any natural product where they go, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. Well, we really qualify people. And if they're still with us, you know, I don't know if there's particular language. We've talked about that in terms of qualification formally, you know, getting something in writing, but at a minimum, we're always putting something in writing, like the manufacturer, that this is a natural product. This is a natural stone, and X, Y, and, you know, and if you're in Italy, I mean, there was a great talk. I listened to Joe Salvo years ago, talk about there's no real wrong place to put it. They put it everywhere, but their expectations are in alignment with what they think it's going to do. They're okay with letting the stone do its thing. Most of our clients aren't. They think it's going to clean itself and be just fine forever, and then you get the call. So I think we got to really work on qualifying it. That's the big one. And I think we've got to have a lot of time, minimum something in writing to the effect that we've had this discussion, that there's an awareness. Not that I can prevent it, but that they know that it's going to do its thing, and they've been so warned, you know.
I think that that's a very good explanation. It's as long as you can make a customer understand what they're getting and what its limitations might be, that can be the best way to protect yourself in the event that it's going to come up. You know,
Boy,
well,
Marible's scary.
what's that?
White marble is scary in my field. White marble frightens me in the showers because it can be more than just moisture penetration. It can be the soap, the shampoo, all these natural soaps people are using these days. There's a load of chemicals involved in the process of taking a shower and bathing, so it affects that white marble a lot. It scares me.
Well, now you're getting into another area though. Soaps create
Right.
mold. You know, certain soaps will turn anything moldy. You know, and that's definitely problematic. But I can't blame it on the soap. I'm racking my brain trying to think of one I've ever seen, I've ever looked at. That soap was a part of it. And you're talking to a guy who cuts things apart and looks at them under a microscope all the time. And I have never run into that. Does it affect it? Most certainly, you know. But I don't. What I was going to say before was, Mark, don't we have a white paper still out on this particular issue?
We do, Dave, and it's fading here in my background, but in the reference manual, there's the white paper that Dave is referring to about using stone in wet areas, and it's about mesh back stone as well. It talks about that. And Rob, am I right, Rob Roderick, that there's a letter that contractors can send, like Mike was talking about, pre-qualifying what the customer expects? That's in here.
I'm not sure. I know they were working on it. I'm not sure if it made it in or not, but there's a lot of letters. If you guys aren't familiar with the reference manual, it's got, you know, all these different topics that tile installers deal with across the country, and it has pre-written letters that you can give your contractor or homeowner to kind of, like Travis said, qualify them or control their expectations. So I know if it's not in there, Mark, they were working to have it in there. So I'll look as we're going along this conversation and double check.
Okay. Alicia, that purple herbal essence, that's pretty good stuff. Oh, you're muted.
We see it all the time. People use crazy colored shampoos, or especially the new purple shampoo for bleach blonde hair that people love to use, or the charcoal. That and natural stone it's a disaster from the beginning.
What are you seeing that it does to the stone?
Well, it depends on what kind of stone it is. A lot of times, you know, what you put on top of it and the minerals in the stone determine what it's going to do. Here lately, since I've moved locations, I'm seeing a lot of pink and red in my grout, and that's not just natural stone. That's anything that will absorb color. And I think it has a lot to do with our water around here, and then the products people are using in the shower.
Mm-hmm. So water chemistry too. Mike, I don't want to take over here, but I'm just checking the comments, and Will White of Custom mentioned six-sided ceiling. And I know that we've heard Rod Sigmund talk a lot about six-sided ceiling at some of the technical committee meetings. And Will, can you comment a little bit about six-sided ceiling and what that can or can't do, if it helps or not?
Well, I was commenting on
Kind of hard to hear you, Will.
can you hear me now?
A little bit better.
I was just saying that Dave Govis is correct. You can't guarantee no issues even when you do a ceiling or a complete dip like the six-sided ceiling method. So it's really the mineralogy in the marble, and then like you're all talking about, the soaps and shampoos, etc.
Okay. kind of hard to hear you, but what I'm hearing you say is that what everybody's saying, what Dave is saying, the mineralogy, all of this stuff, it doesn't necessarily solve the issue.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah, Paul.
In fact, I was just researching just to make sure that the shampoos particularly can make a difference because they contain an item, usually an anionic surfactant. Basically, it makes water wetter and more likely to cut grease and get the oils out of your hair, but it also will soak into marble a lot faster than non-shampooed water. So the shampoo can make a big difference.
I gotta say, I don't have any experience with colored shampoos. I haven't gotten one of those yet.
Never too late, Dave.
No, man, I'm trying to retire real hard, you know, and it ain't working so good.
We're glad you're not.
Hey, Mark, I wanted to get back with you. There is a letter, a pre-written letter about stone and wet areas, basically talking about the risk and how, you know, the installer will do everything he can to eliminate some of those risks, but it's a possibility that it could happen. And it says send some pictures, and it has some pictures here you can send with that to the homeowner before you do a job.
Yeah, I thought so. Awesome. You know, I want to mention the reference manual again. What a terrific resource. I hope you're all using it routinely. If you haven't looked at the reference manual in a while, take a breeze through it. It's just astounding how much information our technical committee has put in there for us. And Mike, if I can ask Scott Carruthers, I think Scott has something to add on this topic too.
Well, Dave covered it really well, but my statement early on was what do you do? And it's very simple. It's 2 letters. No. There's a very prominent person in the NTCA who does extremely high-end bathroom remodels, almost all natural stone. And in doing those, he, for quite some time, is refusing to put that natural stone in a steam shower for sure, and not even a standard shower, because he knows the results. And he's been successful in getting those clients to move to a porcelain that is very closely aligned with that stone product, and the problems just go away. Now, he's still doing stone out in the bath area and other areas that are not affected by moisture. But he said, as far as showers go, he said, I just tell them no. And I said, you're talking about high-end clientele. He said, very high-end. And when they realize the problems that their friends have had, and then realize that they can't fix it, it doesn't go away. Heaters, dehumidifiers, it doesn't go away. They come back and say, well, we'll consider it. And he's done very well doing it that way, and his problems have just gone away.
Yeah,
Right, because it's not even just a matter of the fact that it's wet and it's holding water. Maybe it looks darker. It's that it is permanently discolored.
It's the chemistry of the stone.
Mm-hmm.
It was never worth it to me. And what made me go the route of no marble on floors in showers was we were doing these high-rise condo projects, and this was for the owner of the project. And he owed me hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then we go to do his house and put this marble in on his floor, and it discolors. And obviously there was no making him happy. And he owed me a lot of money. That was it. I quit.
Hey, Mike, I want to ask you a question. You mentioned the glass that, you know, really you could see through, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was happening there? And I think you said that was topical with the bonding flange type grade.
No, that one actually just had clogged weep holes.
Oh.
And the glass, you could see through the glass and see that the thin set within an area of about 12 inches from the drain, the thin set was all darker. So the glass looked, you know, a whole section darker than the rest. And when we took it out, this was a while ago, it might have actually, yeah, the weep holes were clogged, but I think it was also missing a pre-pitch, that shower. So it had a, you know, it had a lot of things wrong with it, but that was really the first time that somebody called me out, and I went to look and see what had gone wrong with someone else's installation. And that was what I found, was that the weep holes were just completely filled with, I don't know if it was calcium or I couldn't tell what it was, you know, but definitely there was no water getting through.
Okay. You know, that makes me think about, I heard some talk about surface supplied membrane, and we're hearing about porcelain tile that looks a lot like stone. So who can tell us what, you know, the effect of coverage, the coverage of our thin set and the bonding coverage, how does that factor into this? Well, if you don't have correct coverage, even under that porcelain, could you have the same problem that the stone is experiencing even with underneath the bond of the porcelain? Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, I would imagine that, you know, regardless of whether the coverage is correct or not, if the water cannot evacuate down at the bottom of the drain, either at the clamping flange or as it meets the top of the drain, that marble's still going to be discolored in spite of correct coverage or incorrect. That would be, that's my guess.
Okay. Awesome.
So some of the things that we were talking about, and which leads us to another topic. Does anybody have any other insight or questions to the topic we were just talking about?
I
All
do.
right, we can.
I have one.
Yes.
I've done white marble shower floors over mud pan systems for decades, and I really haven't had any issues. Part of it might be the quality of the marble. Can you turn yours down? And obviously a mud pan system, the water drains through. So you're in an advantage there. Even if you have temporary darkness around the drain, in a mud pan system, that should dissipate within a matter of an hour or two after you're done using it. So I see the problem with foam pan systems when it comes to natural stone, but I just haven't had the same issues that I keep hearing. So I'm not sure why.
Well, I think you're correct that if you do have a weep hole clamping type of drain, and you do have a dry packed mud bed that's not packed too tightly, you do have an efficient means of evacuating the water out in a fast way where you reduce the likelihood of the marble discoloring. But I think, like what Dave was saying, is that the unpredictable nature of some stones can still have an area get darkened even with the best practice. And there have been guys that have asked me about that, and that's why we brought it up today, was just to see if anybody had any other ideas towards resolving those types of things.
We had as many problems with water in, water out with natural stone as we had when we went to a bonded membrane, you know, sheet membrane, surface membrane. And they probably weren't quite of the same nature, but it seemed like it's, you know, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I mean, we have a lot of, particularly when we have mineral heavy water, we'd get a lot more mineral exchange through the dry pack and the tile interface. It seemed like that would come up, you know, we'd see more rust deposit type scenarios and efflorescence type scenarios. And we tried modifying our mixes several times. You know, I think there's a problem either way. And I don't know. I really question the 6-sided ceiling thing, and I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent, but I mean, it feels to me like everywhere we turn, all roads come back to this is a bad idea. We could 6-side seal and epoxy grout, and it still seems that water finds a way. And if water does find a way, as the sealer degrades at the surface, it's not going to degrade below, then you've encapsulated the moisture in the stone. So it's a real tedious proposition as far as I can see. And I don't know if anybody has any input on that or not, but I'd be curious.
On six-sided ceiling, Will White has posted a link on that topic from his company's website. If you guys want to check the chat screen, there's a link there for that. And I do see that Chris Walker has his hand up, and Mike, I think Paul Lucia might have some great discussion. No, Paul's does not. Okay, Chris Walker, you have your hand up, sir?
Yeah, hi, Michael, and everybody else. So yeah, my question kind of piggybacks on Lee's. You know, these white marble steam showers and wet areas have been around for thousands of years, and it really is just in the last 20 years. Maybe I missed the beginning, and I think some of it was attributable to top surface membranes, but is so much of it, Dave and everybody else, really just a function of the lower quality stone? I mean, at the end of the day, or is it just not having good weeps? Because weeps all fill eventually, right? You have a perfectly performed pea gravel weep iatmo drain. Sooner or later, those weeps are going to clog up, but that doesn't mean that those showers have failed. So it's perplexing to me, and I know there's been a ton of time spent about it. I don't know that I have the magic bullet answer though, because I've been asked as well. So I know that that's probably a topic that's over already, but it just I just don't really feel comfortable like I know any more than I did, and I'm just curious about it.
I would volunteer that the statuary that I used to install doesn't seem at all like the statuary that's currently being installed. And I don't know the significance of that. I've never studied the issue or looked at it, but.
How many people think there's a perspective issue here, though? Like the amount of information. I mean, we didn't get hardly any callbacks, it seems like 20 years ago, and it's not because we, weren't available. But I kind of have this sneaking suspicion that, and I'm fully well aware, like when I'm on jobs now, people are double checking everything that I say, and they're on the web and on their phone constantly. There's so much information available out there, good and bad, but I'm wondering if there's a hyper awareness with our hyper connectivity, and there's no answer to that, but I'm just curious if that's it seems like the clients have taken us to task to an umpteenth degree in the last 10 years. I don't know if anybody else has the same experience.
Well, I'll tell you that this is a good segue into the next thing that we're going to speak of, which is actually about terms and conditions and language when you have a new client. So, informing the homeowner or the customer is definitely a major priority, and even supplying them with some education is extremely important to make sure that anything you say or anything you do doesn't come back to bite you or cost you money. So this reminds me of something that I saw, a video I saw with Dave, and Dave was talking about the language in one of his contracts one time when he said and Dave, you correct me if I'm wrong, and you can tell the story if I screw it up, but basically you did something like a hospital. You had several floors in a hospital to do, and you specified that the floors were going to be leveled with Level Quick, and then you did the job and everything was awesome, and then sure enough, the supervisor comes over.
It's hurting me.
Now he remembers.
It was actually AR. It was KR or AR
15.
15, and it was Ardex. I wrote a change for self-leveling, and when the job was done, this architect, I remember his name, 25, 30 years later, Bob Salitra, comes with his level and starts sticking it on the floor and saying, this isn't level, this isn't level, this isn't level, and killed the whole change order. Either I go back and level the hospital, and obviously I meant flat, but the product said self-leveling, and that's what they expected, were level floors throughout the hospital. And yeah, that hurt. $76,000 worth of hurt. I'll never forget.
Yeah, let me tell you, Dave, that in my terms and conditions on the second page, when people get an estimate from me, there is a line that says, self-leveling underlayments, SLUs, do not level a substrate. SLUs seek level during the process, and they are used to increase the overall flatness, not level a floor. So in seeing that video that you did, I put that in my terms and conditions. So if anybody ever says to me, you didn't level this floor, that's right, I didn't. I'm only going to flatten it. And so I appreciate hearing that story. And so the way that this connects with what we were talking about is that certainly people can put a warning or disclaimer in your terms and conditions that the customer should sign along with agreeing to the price and everything, that they understand that any marble that they get that could potentially be put in a wet area could discolor, not through fault of installation method, but perhaps to the stone itself or the type of method that was used, whether, as long as it's of course by one of the handbooks. So I think that that's a nice way to go forward. And I learned when I first started doing the terms and conditions page, because back when I was starting out my business, I basically had two lines. You agree to the price and everything's good, and that was all it was. And then as the years went by and little things burned me here and there, I learned to add things to my terms and conditions. So it was one way to protect me, but also it was another way to inform the customer. It helped them understand what they were getting. I have a line in my terms that says a customer must inspect their stone at the distributor. That way, if I don't want to have the stone delivered to their house, I start pulling it out of crates and they're like, oh, this vein doesn't look right. This doesn't look like what we thought. Well, I need them to know that at the distributor. So you can save yourself a lot of heartache by using the terms and conditions, and also making sure that you're wording all of these line items appropriately. For instance, saying, that we're going to use an SLU, and the SLU will be used to flatten the overall substrate, as opposed to saying level anywhere. So go ahead, Dave.
Chris Walker,
Yes, sir.
where's that standard on that self-leveling underlayment these days?
Now, it just so happens a little bit of how do you make the sausage. I'm looking at 108.21, which will be the interior installation of self-leveling underlayment. Now, that's what the manufacturers proposed the standard be labeled as. And for whatever it's worth, there was quite a, I suppose, acrimonious, in terms of how these standards discussions go, conversation about using the term self-leveling underlayment, because it's neither self or leveling. So SLU as an acronym is not going to be part of the standard, and every place self-leveling underlayment is mentioned, it will also have a reference to flowable hydraulic cement underlayment, because that's what this product actually is. It's not actually self-leveling underlayment. I loved your qualification, Michael. That's spot on. That's perfect. And I had this conversation literally yesterday at a scope review meeting where we did a 8-story building for a client. We're going to do a little annex for the guy, and he's got another 8-story building where he got on this scope review call with the architect, the owner, 5 people from the GC, and blasted me on how the as-builts didn't have level floors. And he spent literally $50,000 in, quote, self-leveling. So yeah, I mean, and the reason that the standard is going to be so specific to kind of exclude the fact that self and leveling is not what the product does is for conversations like that, like the same conversations as Michael's had. I'm sure Trask and most of you folks have had the same conversation. So yeah, it's in answer to your question, Dave, it's going to be out by the next meeting.
All right, so Michael, Trask, and whoever else is interested, if you haven't seen a copy of this, you need to get a copy. And right now
This-
it's available because it's not a standard, so it's not a protected item, correct, Chris?
I don't know that I can answer that. I can't send what I've got because it's just Word versions and it's work in progress versions. I think, I have to recall, I cleared my negative on the ballot before the meeting last month. So this is gonna basically get balloted now.
Well,
Let me do this. For the few folks that email me or include me in the chat, I'll see what version I can get you that is the last version. I just need to make sure that I can let it go.
Yeah, I'd be very interested in it.
I suggest that you guys read that. You know, I'm not taking the sword no more. I mean, I really am semi-retired, you know? So I'm trying to back off of this.
Well, Dave and I had some pretty in-depth conversations about this, what, almost a year ago already?
Yeah. And well, you guys do whatever you want. It doesn't affect me. I live in the woods. I don't care.
Chris, did you say you'd like to post your email address in the comments?
No.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that.
Okay.
My email address is kind of public knowledge. It's out there. I get some wild ones, but I'll put it in the chat room so you folks can have it. Okay.
Thank you.
I strongly
I think
suggest.
good luck on your retirement, Mr. Dave.
Pardon?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Good for you.
Nick,
I said, good luck on your retirement, Dave Gobus. Good for you. You set enough time to make it for the rest of your days. That's a dream I'm sure we'd all like to achieve.
Yeah, well, it ain't been working so good, but it's working better than it used to. I'm an even bigger ass now than I used to be. That's how you get rid of them. Just be an ass. And I'm really good at it.
All right, so you know, other things that things that you want to put maybe in your wording. For instance, I've had times where I had to pull up some carpet and I had to install some tile work and pull up the carpet and there's just a ton of cracks in the substrate, cracks everywhere, and tell the customer, well, I got to fix it. There's going to be an additional charge, and then they're not interested in either having it fixed or paying for the additional work. And so in my terms and conditions, I put, during your estimate, there may have been some services that could not be realized. In essence, the carpet concealed cracks, furniture obscured an adequate view of the floor, these types of things. If you put that type of language in, it'll save you from having to think about it when you do go to an estimate, because it's there for a reminder for you as the years go by, but also every single customer, they can choose to look at your terms or they can choose not to, but you can't be accused of not letting them know. This would be a way of, does anybody have any instances or things that, have helped them or bit them by having terms and conditions that were appropriate for them or not having it?
I've gotten more care. One of my best friends is an attorney, and I've been bitten as much by language, like, being called to task on the leveling. The unintended consequences, and he's real, fond of saying, like, the more language you use, the more it can damn you as well. So be very careful with your language that way. Like Dave being called out on level in the hospital, we have something that we've, had for a long time in the language of our contracts that talks about, and I don't recall the specifics right off the top, but the gist of it is we're going to start in one continuous motion and not have to be leaving the job because the builder or whatever the contractor said, oh, by the way, halfway through, the plumbers are going to come in and you're going to have to clear out for 3 days. Well, that never worked for us. So there's a charge if we have to leave. Oddly enough, I've tried to pull guys off of jobs and been hung on that language. Like, I got an emergency over here. I got to pull a couple guys for a couple of days. Oh, no, that's not the way the language works in your contract. So I've been stuck on that a couple of, be careful about what you put in there and really carefully consider it. As you said, it's a constant evolution, but I've been bitten as much as I've been saved, it feels like. So I would caution people.
Yes, very, very understandable there. You know, it's you do have to be careful how you word it, and you should always have an attorney look over anything that you're going to put out for people to sign. So don't just go it alone. You know, there can be some simple things in there that can save you too. For instance, if you have a home and the tile specified was about 3/8 of an inch, and the house has 15 doors throughout the entire home, and then they go and get a different tile, and now every single one of those doors has got to be cut. If you don't have something in there to say, well, there will be an additional charge for, you know, one door or any quantity of doors over 3, you know, you have to have something that will protect you so you can charge for it, because otherwise someone is going to say, well, the door is in your way. Of course you're going to have to cut it. Why should I have to pay more for this job? And customers often don't understand, you know, all the time involved in doing something as simple as cutting a door, especially if the person has solid core doors that are 9 feet tall, you know. So you want to think about these types of things if it's not already in the language of your contract, and of course have an attorney look over everything that you put together. Does anybody else have any other instances or anything? Okay, so another contractor had talked to me on our last topic, and he does a lot of bathroom installations. And he was telling me how he doesn't like to use silicone caulking or silicone sealant in his corners because he finds it difficult to work with. And I understand there is a little bit of a learning curve for it. You know, everybody has done it before and didn't have the proper technique or clean supplies and make a little mess with it. So I understand that, but it's not that difficult once you do it more than twice or once, really, properly. And then he said to me also that customers do not like the shiny look of silicone sealant. They prefer the color matched caulking that is siliconized acrylic because it does blend in to the rest of the grouted areas a little bit more convincingly. So, and I understand where he's coming from. And I did have an instance with this one time myself where I did do silicone caulking in a bathroom, and the customer said to me, I don't like it, it's too shiny. And I actually had to remove it and put in a siliconized acrylic. And I told that customer, I said, look, I said, your shower's waterproof. It's still going to function the same way, whether the silicone is in there or a siliconized acrylic is in there. However, the product does not have the same expectancy or durability. So I told him this was kind of like putting tires on a car. And at a certain period of time, the tires are going to look worn. They're not going to perform the same, and they will need to be replaced. And I told the lady that, and she was okay with that. And, you know, how long is it going to last? I said, I really don't know. I said, I have no idea how long a siliconized acrylic caulking is going to last in your bathroom. But as long as you understand that within some period of time, between 5 to 10 years, maybe more, you will have to have this caulking removed and redone. And so I just wanted to clarify with maybe with Scott can tell me, is there, besides the fact that we understand the longevity is in question, is there any other, you know, because we know that it's not going to expand and contract as well as a silicone sealant. or a urethane sealant, but is there any other, what's the other downfalls maybe perhaps to not using that silicone sealant and using a siliconized acrylic? And Scott, is that something that you could help us out with?
I'll try. Siliconized products have been on the market for a long time. I remember at one time I was stocking 33 colors because that's what the manufacturer had in grout. And they had it in sanded, which was great because it took away the sheen, gave it that texture, and it worked well, except that when you get a transition from season to season and have movement, it dries rock hard, and in doing so, it will not take the movement, and you'll get a hairline crack is now a callback. 100% silicone, conversely, has the elastomeric quality and the tenacity to stick to that surface, and it'll stay. So it's an ongoing maintenance issue. It's probably most problematic in backsplashes because that's almost always an outside wall and you get movement. Cabinets are fixed and the wall is moving. You get some separation between the two and it's a callback because you see that every day you wash dishes.
And there's a lot of action there with doors shutting and the drawers shutting and everything like that. People leaning on countertops and those types of things. Did anybody have any experiences they wanted to talk about with using different sealants or caulkings?
Randy Fleming.
Yeah, I just did, actually just on the job I'm working on right now. They didn't have any of the silicone in the right color, so I rolled the dice and it was a bad roll of the dice. I used the siliconized latex, did all my caulking, and 2 weeks later I got the call back because they had all shrank because it was 3/8 inch thick tile. It shrank that much and they were all had different voids in them. Even though I filled them all the way up, it shrank that much. And so like Scott says, if it gets hard, well, that moisture is going somewhere, and as it dries in like that, it's going to get hard. So bad roll of the dice for me.
Mm-hmm. And are you guys funny? I'm sorry.
My name is Bernd Wilke. I'm the lead instructor for Müller Academy in Charlotte, North Carolina. We're a German company based here in North Carolina. And in Germany, we were working with silicone. We never had caulk. So it was always silicone. What I think what the manufacturers should do is adding sand to their silicone, because that would take some shine away. So we don't have the problems with the shiny silicone grout lines anymore. Hands down, silicone is the best material. It's not shrinking, it's more durable, more flexible, stays much longer. I always sold all these caulk lines and grout lines as maintenance grout lines. You said 10, 12 years. I always said 3 to 4 years, and then you have to replace it because these caulk materials always taking on some mold. They are much more easier to mold than regular grout lines. But if the manufacturers have a chance to try out to add sand to the silicone, I think that would be a step forward to get the shine out of the silicone.
And I might be incorrect here because I've never done this myself, but I have heard of guys actually putting the silicone in there and then dusting the joint with grout. Is that a real thing? Do people do that? Does that work?
I never heard that, but it goes in the right direction. But I put the manufacturers in charge to deal with that.
It's actually part of the union training in some areas where we dust them with grout.
Okay. Is that so that you don't see is there any adverse effects to doing that, or basically it's just helping eliminate some of the shine and it doesn't hurt?
I've never had it come back at me, but it's not something I was ever particularly happy about doing. But I've never been forced to take one back out that we did that to get around it wasn't a regular practice for us. There had to be a reason for us to do it.
Right.
Well, that'd be Will. I'd be anxious to hear from you, Will White, on if you guys have heard this claim about the shininess of the silicone? Because I know there were some other manufacturers that seemed like they were having conversations about changing up their silicone in some way to make it look more like the grout. So what information do you have about that, Will? Are you there, Will?
I think we're having some audio problems with Will today.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay. No, it's been an ongoing thing for years, right? So I'd say about 4 years ago, we reformulated, and we're always looking for ways to reduce the static coefficient, the collecting capabilities of silicone on floor applications, and definitely trying to reduce the shine as much as possible. It's an inherent tendency in silicone and siliconized materials. So, we're always trying to reduce those two elements in that formulation. Not being the chemist in charge of it, I believe we're at the latest technologies now without substantially increasing costs. So that's a role in it as well. But definitely something that we're always looking at. So I don't know what the competitors have done, but I'd like to think that they've probably made the same reformulation moves in a general sense. But personally and professionally, I'm a silicone believer. I'm not a caulk or even a modified siliconized caulk believer because the timeline on it, it's going to degrade, it's going to shrink and separate over time. Honestly, it'll get a lot dirtier, but yeah, it's on our list and always is.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Will.
Can I mention one thing? Stop me if this isn't permitted, but I've had great success with colorwriteinc.com out of Yukon, Oklahoma. It's a wonderful company. They offer latex, 100% silicone, sanded, unsanded, shiny, and matte in over like 400 grout matching colors. So if you want a matte finish with sanded, you can certainly get it from them.
All right, thank you for that.
I'm curious what people are doing. So, I mean, in no uncertain terms, silicone or siliconized acrylic, it doesn't matter. This is a maintenance joint. It's just a product of the duration of the joint. Where we've had the biggest challenge and the biggest issues is dissimilar materials, like on an acrylic base, for example, or a tub surround. And if we do it by the book, our lifespan of that silicone seems to be radically reduced because we're capturing moisture behind that impermeable layer again. That's a tough detail for me, and I really have tried to sell profiles or different mechanical solutions there, if you will, versus a caulk joint, and let it be a dynamic joint that can evacuate moisture. And I know this discussion goes way back, but I just have had crummy success with it. I've got one in my own house and I mean, it's by the book.
Hey, Task, you know what I did? I discovered this trial and error on my own too, where I would do the silicone after the grout had basically set up, right? And then I'd be down the road and done on the job. And I was having some problems with moisture behind the silicone. So what I started doing is coming back, rearranging my schedule. I'd come back in a couple of days after that grout had time to cure, got rid of all that moisture back there. Then I'd do the silicone. Ended the problem for me pretty much.
My feeling was, and I'm interested as to why, Mark. My feeling is, though, once it gets into the, absorbs into the grout joints, into the assembly, and it evacuates vertically down, where does it go? If that shower is being used by 3 teenagers a day, it's a tub surround, say, you're going to collect a lot of moisture back behind there. It is my feeling, and it doesn't evacuate quick enough. And it's better. The silicone's 1,000 times better, obviously, than siliconized acrylic, but we still have an issue there.
Oh,
To the
yeah.
degree
I,
I
I
even
guess
had
I was
discussion
talking about putting the silicone in while my joint was still damp.
No,
But yeah,
I'm talking about long-term, you know, the propensity for mildew and mold to build up behind the joint.
yeah.
And, you know, hard grouting it allows it to weep, but I hope you like a cracked joint, you know, that doesn't work.
Hey,
So,
I want to ask Bernd. Bernd might have information on this. I know in Germany, Bernd, that there are silicone installers, right? That's their specialty. How do they, do you know, what do you know about that? Oh, you're on mute, sir. Oh,
So in Germany, the difference of the silicones to the American silicones is that the silicone in Germany, it's a little bit thicker than here. It's kind of really liquidish here and much easier to install if it is slightly thicker. And we never had problems that moisture got behind the silicone because it gets anchored into the grout line. Of course, you have to scrape out the grout line nicely after grouting, and it anchors in, and the connections to the wall and, as example, to the bathtub, it kind of glues on. So there shouldn't be a chance that water gets behind the silicone. But the main point here is that the silicones have a different consistency in Germany than here in the US. We still shipping in auto chemie, auto chemistry products from Germany to use their silicone because it's just easier to work with and it is stiffer. So, and it holds longer and it is more rubbery than the silicone that is sold here in the United States.
okay, that's interesting, Bernd. Thanks. Um, Mike, do you want to ask our attendees if, you know, I'm curious too about what Trask brought up. In a wet area, the water migrates down to that silicone joint there, and what's the trouble?
Well, I could tell you that I know exactly what he's talking about, and it's something that you know, comes to mind when I'm doing, let's say I'm doing a shower with a linear drain, and it's a topical waterproofing, bonded waterproofing on the top. The bottom joint that meets the linear drain lip, you know, you're supposed to put caulking in there, but then again, I feel like I'm creating a dam where the water that would be running down the topical waterproofing would, you know, hit this silicone, and then it can't actually travel into the drain because of this barrier, because the tile is more than likely porcelain. And then here I am sealing the very bottom of it with silicone. So I'll often, if I have a linear drain where, let's say it's a tile in the grate type or something like that, if this area is not seen, I will actually leave that part open so I can, you know, encourage any moisture that's running down the wall to evacuate towards the drain instead of using a silicone sealant and blocking it in.
so Michael, we'd actually considered that as well in that particular scenario. And instead of setting the floor first, and I don't know if this is splitting hairs or not, but one of my installers said if we were to cut the floor tile to the wall and then silicone that joint around the perimeter, we do have theoretically an evacuation point underneath
Yes, I
differently
understand.
by capillary action. And in the instance you're talking about, I feel exactly the same way, that my cap block in the form of silicone in the backer rod, it can only evacuate water to the depth of that silicone, and then it has to come up and over the dam effectively to evacuate.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because this type of scenario, the floor will wind up being in fairly often before the walls. If we're doing like a curbless entry with a linear drain, we'll get the floor out of the way and take care of that. So yeah, that's a good point. You can reverse the order of things if it was a concern. That's a good point.
We've got Dave Karp building a surround or a shower right there. I wonder how Dave Karp is handling that situation on this job.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I figured I'd pipe in eventually. Yeah, siliconing, you know, over the years, I definitely took, you know, the NTCA and the manual into consideration. Really tried to silicone vertical joints, bottom joints over the years. Where I found it difficult is against mosaic shower floors. Trying to keep a nice, tight, crisp line there of siliconing.
Or a pebble floor is almost impossible.
No, yeah, that ain't happening. And then the discussion of evaporation or like you're saying, the water escaping, so to speak. So then I quit doing the bottom. I'll do some inside corners. This one's a fiberglass tub, so this one's definitely getting silicone. Way too much flex in a fiberglass. But you know, what I've also found, and with other people on Facebook, is the new showers and the banding in corners and is really holding showers together. So there's a lot of showers where it gets grouted all the way hard, but just kind of assuming that with the fabric seam tape in there, it holds the junction together better. I know a lot of people doing Schluter systems, Curdy, have had no crackouts. So it kind of depends on the tile, depends on the day. And if it does crack out, I can always come back and do it later.
We've had that experience with pebbles, Dave, and I've rolled the dice a couple of times in small showers.
Yeah, what a mess.
Yeah, but on a Schluter system, we have hard grouted it, and I've periodically checked up on the one I have in mind, and we've not had an issue. Not to say that I would advocate it, but that's something I elected to do, you know, knowing the consequences.
Yeah, I don't know what the silicone joint's going to look like against a pebble floor.
Awful.
I guess I would do the walls first, maybe pebbling up to the wall. You know, so there isn't the whoop-de-woo is going to be against the wall instead of.
It's a difficult one to win no matter which way you do it.
Yeah, that one I just grouted up hard. And you know, if I'm the guy putting silicone in every change of plane, I am the only guy in Minneapolis doing it. Quite frankly, I mean, people are grouting hard and maybe putting silicone over the top of the grout joint, which the silicone just breaks down and peels away after a few years. I keep my.
That's interesting to me because I would think up north that they would do. I would think up north it would be more of a movement joint from freezing and thawing. That's interesting.
Yeah, so in Minnesota we have the extreme temps. Kitchen backsplashes against countertop has to be silicone, or else you might as well just schedule your callback because it's going to break out.
Right.
That's 100% given. Every backsplash is getting silicone. I got no time to go back, but I'll make the time.
Mike, these are really excellent discussion topics you've led us through today, but I do want to respect everybody's time. Do you have anything else to add before we move into our Ask the Ref game?
No, I appreciate everybody's input, and it was a great discussion. And you can always, if anybody want to continue the discussion in any way, they can always email Mark or myself, anybody of the NTCA team, and we'll continue the conversation with you then. So just want to thank everybody for being here, and I'm sure this was a lot of good information that can be shared with everybody on the NTCA YouTube channel in the future. So thanks a lot, everybody. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. You're a great guy, ran a great program today. And I want to remind everybody that this has been recorded and it will become available on NTCA's YouTube channel. So if you aren't subscribed, please subscribe and you'll be able to check in and find this. So great to see all of you today. Thank you very much. Have a great day and be safe out there.